You can tell a man's whole story from the way he waits. Some folks stand like they expect mercy. This one stood like he'd outlived it. I saw you long before you knew me, Jack. Your grill rose out of the fog like a ship's prow, and the mist around my boots turned headlight white. The truck stop's old neon open sign flickered between promises, the O sputtering like a dying eye. I had my thumb out and my other hand on a canvas satchel, whose strap had chewed a sore in my shoulder a long time ago. The rain needled soft and the air smelled like diesel, wet pine, and those iron notes that come from new road salt even in months when nobody needs it. You slowed, blinkers ticking. Your rig exhaled a tired sigh, and the cab light came on when you popped the handle. Warmth rolled out, coffee, cracked vinyl, a hint of pine-scented card clipped to an air vent. Your radio carried a drift of AM chatter and far-off static like nighttime surf. I climbed in. The door thunked shut. For a second, the world outside became a photograph. Fog, sign, puddles, the hunched silhouette of the diner that never closed. You gave me the look drivers give, the inventory glance, boots, hands, bag, eyes. Where you headed, you asked, and your voice had gravel in it, the kind that says a man's learned to make peace with the long parts. Not where, I said, kneading rain out of my sleeves. How far? You eased her back onto the highway. The wipers counted the space between us. Out there, the pines loomed like dark choir stalls. They receded and receded again as if the forest were breathing. You didn't speak for a mile or three. Men who clock night miles learn that silence is a bridge, not a wall. You look cold, you said eventually. I don't keep heat like I used to, I told you, and my breath didn't fog the glass when I said it. You saw that. Most folks don't, or won't. You did. You offered the thermos. It had a dent, like a boot had kissed it, and a little burn ring around the lip. The coffee had that all-night taste, bitter and loyal, a good companion. I cupped it, warming my hands more than my mouth. Name's Jack, you said. I turned the cup in my palms. Haven't had cause to use mine in a long while. Everyone's got a name, you said. Not pushy, just the way men say things they believe. Not everyone keeps one, I said. Sometimes the road scrubs you clean of it. The miles started doing that thing where they go thinner, stretched taffy under the wheels. We passed a green sign listing a town with a population small enough to count by cousins. We cruised through a spot where the highway rose on pylons over black water, and the guardrail was dented in two places like someone had leaned too hard on the world and pushed a bit. You ever pick up a man without pockets? I asked. You glanced at me. Can't say I have. That used to be me, I said. I didn't need 'em, had nothing to carry, nothing but this. I tipped the satchel with the heel of my hand. The canvas had the kind of polish a thing gets from being handled more than anything deserves. The buckle clicked when the truck hit a seam, a small, hungry sound. I carry proof now. Proof of what? That I'm not putting you on. I let the wipers talk for a beat. I've been dead for years. The truck didn't swerve. Your hands didn't tighten. You were a man made to hear the strange with your shoulders still square. But I felt it in you. A small shiver. The way a dog lifts its head in its sleep when thunder is still counties away. Folks say that kind of thing to be dramatic. You said in that plain tone that sits down next to a thing and refuses to flinch. Usually means they're tired or done. You mean it different? I mean it plain, I said. Plain and not pretty. I died on a two-lane that never got widened because the county commissioners couldn't justify the cost. I died under a sky that smelled like wet wheat and hot rubber. I died with a song I didn't like on the radio and a woman's name in my mouth that wasn't mine to say anymore. Your jaw clicked once, a thoughtful little hinge sound. How long ago? I looked at the passenger mirror and saw nothing usefully honest in the wash of your taillights. Long enough for the billboards to change 3 times and the motels to turn into storage units. Long enough to forget what my own voice used to sound like when I wasn't telling this. You drummed your fingers once on the wheel. And yet here you are. And yet, I said. The road made that wet whisper it has, that velvet hush of tires threading the world's seam. We passed a roadside memorial. 2 white crosses, plastic flowers blown bleached and brittle, a tinfoil balloon that would never deflate because it had already given up trying. I looked away. The dead measure distance by shrines. How'd it happen? You asked, as much to keep me in the cab as to satisfy curiosity. I'll get there, I said. It asks to be told in its own order. Death's funny that way, always insisting on sequence even after it's done with time. You snorted softly. You talk like a preacher who sold his Bible to pay the bar tab. I tried preaching, I said. Words didn't stick. I tried drinking. Nothing stayed down. The road never lets you forget what you are. It just gives you miles to practice being it. The static on your radio rose and dipped, little ghost hands turning the knob. The night was kind of empty, that means it's full of attention. The forest shouldered close again, and a low fog braided through the trunks the way cigarette smoke curls through a jukebox light in an old picture. Where'd you pick up the satchel? You asked, because men like to put their questions on objects when people won't answer straight. Same place I left the last of me, I said. Dug it out of a ditch with these two hands. It was beside me the first time I woke up from being dead, like the road had set out a lost and found box. It only ever holds one thing. When I try to put anything else in it, money, a sandwich, somebody's kindness, it spits it out when I'm not looking. But the one thing it keeps better than God keeps sparrows. You didn't ask what the one thing was. You felt the shape of that question and left it alone a minute. Men who live with engines know to let heat cool before you lay your palm on metal. You cracked the window an inch. Cold flared in with the smell of creosote from a rail spur we weren't near, and that sweet rot of needles that's just this part of the country remembering how to be soil. I pick up a lot of stories, you said. Some of them get better in the telling. Some of them get worse. Yours feels like a kind that stays the same no matter who's listening. It does, I said. It's tied to mile markers, not audiences. I repeat it because repeating is the one thing the dead do better than anybody. You sure you're not just run down and sad? You asked after a mile of quiet where the world seemed to lean its ear to the door. It was half a joke, half a lifeline. You tried to throw it. I used to think so, I said. Tried doctors who didn't believe in ghosts, tried charlatans who believed in nothing else. I went to a courthouse once, thinking if I said it out loud under that seal and those flags, I could make the state take custody of the truth. They gave me a pamphlet about grief and the number of a shelter that serves soup out of coffee urns. But no one looked me in the eye long enough to notice what you noticed at the window. That your breath didn't fog, you said. That my breath has stopped pretending. We rolled past a stretch where the blacktop had been patched so many times the road looked quilted. A far semi hissed on a grade, a lonely animal cry. I watched a roadside reflector slip by and then reappear, and then slip by again. That strange highway double vision that comes when the rain is right and the brain is tired. I died at the corner where a county road hits the old highway, I said finally. There's a curve and a bad crown and a ditch that holds more secrets than it should. I'll tell you the whole of it later. For now, it's enough to say I went into the dark, and it wouldn't let me stay or go. So I walk. The road is a long rope. I'm the knot the world forgot to tie off. You cracked your knuckles and hummed low in your throat, the way men do when they don't like a thing but respect its meanness. Why tell me, you said. Why tell anyone? Because not telling makes the echoes get clever, I said. They start using the spaces you won't speak to set their hooks. Because the road loves secrets the way a wet field loves lightning. It wants the strike. It wants to be scarred and remember you by it. And that bag, you said at last, nodding at the satchel. If you're going to put a man in a cab with something that clicks like teeth, you owe him a peek. I let my thumb rest on the brass tongue of the buckle. It was cold in a way metal gets when it's not borrowing heat from anything alive. The truck hit a shallow pothole and the bag ticked like a clock that doesn't need mainspring or permission. You asked how long, I said. I'm not sure. Years. More than you'd guess by looking at what's left of my face. Less than the road would like. But this'll put us in the same town at least. It's my proof. It's my name when I can't remember having one. I flipped the buckle. The satchel yawned, and the cab air got a notch darker, like the space inside the bag wasn't obeying the little rules that keep sound and light well behaved. You didn't pull away, but I felt your attention lean in as if it weighed something. Inside was a single sheet, old newsprint encased in a plastic sleeve that shouldn't have held up but did. The paper had that brown butter color old papers get, and a smell like wet library and glove box heat. A black and white photograph looked back at us. A man on a bar stool, head turned just enough that you could see he'd been handsome and careless once. The headline said what headlines say when they have to make tragedy fit between a car dealership ad and a coupon for bread. Local man killed in late-night hit and run. There was a name under the photo, and it punched me in places that don't bruise. I put a finger over it without meaning to. The caption mentioned a mile marker. It mentioned a ditch. It mentioned that anyone with information should contact a number that would never ring again, because the woman who used to answer it had gone to Florida to get away from winters and memories, and never came back. I carry this so I don't start telling the wrong version, I said. You'd be surprised how easy it is. The brain loves mercy. It edits, it sands edges. But the road doesn't forgive that kind of working. It wants the exact cut. It wants the blood to remember where it fell. You kept your hands steady at 10 and 2. The thermos lid rattled in its cup just a hair when we crossed the bridge over Salt Creek. The fog got thicker, and any town that might have been out there kept its lights to itself. Why me? You asked softly, not like a challenge. Like a man who suspects he's already inside the story that's being told. Because you stopped, I said. Because men who stop are either brave or lost, and either way they deserve the courtesy of knowing what kind of passenger they've got. And because I felt the road lift a little when your truck pulled over. It does that when it recognizes one of its own. I'm still breathing, you said. Sure, I said. So was I for a while after. It takes time to admit a thing that big. Sometimes years. I slid the clipping back and closed the satchel. The latch caught with a sound that made the hairs on my arms stand. We drove. The radio gave us a hymn that faded into a farm report, and then a man in another state selling knives over the air like salvation. Every few miles there's a little rise where you can see two towns at once if you know where to look. Both of them asleep, and both of them dreaming rain. We topped one of those rises. The road unfurled, dark silk. Your headlights fingered the fog and found nothing but the next of it. You want me to let you out somewhere specific? You asked after a while. Anywhere there's a shoulder, I said. I don't go far. There's a tether. I've learned the length of it the hard way. You said you'd tell me how, you reminded gently, a good man's way of leaving a chair pulled out for a story to sit down in. I will, I said. I'll tell you where the truck came from and what I saw in the water by the culvert, and what the woman at the bar said the last time she used my name like it was spare change. I'll tell you about the other ones who walk. You'll start to see them after that, if you don't already. But not all at once. I don't pour the whole can of gas at the start. The night doesn't need help catching fire. You made that hum in your throat again. The road gave us the kind of straightaway that looks like truth and is nothing of the sort. The fog took on a faint yellow the way fog does near a town, even when you can't see the town yet. The smell of wet creosote sharpened, and way off, a horn blew 3 short notes, and somewhere down in the ditch a chorus of frogs gave it the lie by falling silent as if shushing one another. Tell me one thing I can hold in my hand, you said. One thing that makes sense. I considered. Okay, I said finally. When I close my eyes, I don't see black. I see the reflectors stuttering past, red, white, red in a rhythm that doesn't match the wheels. I see them when I sleep, when I try to pray, when I think about her face. I think I'll see them when the last of me learns that there isn't a last of me. That's my one thing. You nodded once. Men have things like that. Songs they can't unhear, smells that shut the mouth of the day. And another, I said, because the road's tax is always one more. When you hear a thump at 60 and your first thought is dear, your second is the truth. Lock it away if you need to. But don't tell yourself later you never thought it. That kind of lie sets hooks. The fog ahead of us thickened into a soft wall. Your brights made it whiter and more secret. Somewhere a sign waited to tell us how many miles we had to a place that wouldn't feel like arrival. The satchel between my boots ticked once, or maybe my heart did. Some part of the truck hummed back, a sympathy note. Next pull out, I said, and the way I said it sounded like a man asking to be set down on the edge of a dream he's not sure he wants to wake from. You signaled. The yellow blinkers made the mist flash like the belly of a fish. We sailed toward a patch of gravel that had collected beer caps and the black crumbs of blown tires. You slowed us like a man easing a hurt friend into bed. "I'll walk a ways," I said as the truck rolled to a stop. "I have to. It's how I keep from joining the pavement. The road likes to make people into stains and stories. I try to be the second one. You didn't say don't go. You didn't say stay and finish. You just looked at the dash clock like a man who's only just remembered that time is a thing we use to pretend we understand the world. Part of your story's still in front of us, you said. It always is, I said. That's why the dead hitch rides. We need someone alive to carry the other end of the rope when it goes dark. I set my hand on the satchel one last time, then on the handle. Cold came up through the metal like a memory. I looked at you and saw a man the road liked. It would remember you, Jack. It would call you by your truck's name if it had to. It has a way of learning the words we use to love our burdens. Next, Miles, I said, I'll tell you how a man can die and keep his feet, but understand something before I start. I'm not haunting the highway's haunting me. I stepped down into the fog, then leaned back in, rain pinpricking my face. And if you've got a clock in here, I added, nodding at your dash. Don't look at it right now. You looked anyway. They always do. The green digits blinked once, then settled, then held. We both pretended we didn't see what they said. You asked me how it happened, Jack. How I died. You deserve the straight of it. It was a night not so different from this one. Roads slick with mist, headlights stretching too far into a dark that didn't want them. I'd left a bar 2 towns over, half drunk on bad beer and worse decisions. Got into a fight over nothing. Something stupid, a card game or a woman's laugh. I can't remember now. What I do remember is walking the shoulder, boots striking gravel, breath hanging in the cool night like I was pulling smoke out of the air itself. And then the lights came. Big rig, barreling down too fast for that stretch of county road. I remember the sound first, a howl of tires, a scream of gears. Then the impact, like the sky folded itself into my ribs. My whole body went light, and I watched my own boots leave the ground before the black ate me. I should have stayed there, should have rotted under the ditch weeds, another forgotten roadside cross. But I didn't. I remember floating, Jack. Not up into heaven or down into hell, just a few feet above the asphalt, staring at myself broken and still. Saw the driver get out, cursing, panicked, looking around like the trees might be witnesses. He didn't even call it in. Just dragged what was left of me off the road and shoved me into the drainage ditch like trash. Gravel scraped my cheek as I watched my own face tilt into the mud. And then, darkness. But the dark didn't last. When I opened my eyes, it was the next night. Same stretch of road. No blood, no broken bones. My chest rose, my hands flexed. I was standing again right there on the shoulder as if nothing had ever touched me. The ditch was empty. The world was still. But I knew. I knew I had died, and I knew the road had claimed me. I tried walking home. Couldn't. The moment I stepped off the asphalt into the grass, the world tilted, blurred, spat me back onto the white line like I'd never left. The highway had me leashed. That was years ago. How many? I don't even try to count anymore. The world kept moving. Billboards changed, cars grew sleeker, gas stations swapped their signs, but me. I stayed, walking the shoulder, watching trucks thunder by, waiting for someone to notice I wasn't part of their world anymore. You been out here ever since? You asked, your voice low, steady. I nodded. Every night, Jack. Every single night. This is all I get. The long hum of tires, the sting of mist, the sound of engines that don't slow. I've been dead for years, but the road won't let me rest. I looked at you then, let you see the weight in my eyes. That's the worst part. Death wasn't an ending for me. It was a sentence. You asked me what I did after that first night I woke up, Jack. Truth is, I walked. That's all I've done since. The road keeps me. It doesn't matter how far I go, how many miles my boots chew. I can't step more than a few yards from the asphalt. The moment I try, the world tilts. The air buzzes like bees in my teeth, and I'm back on the shoulder again. Like a dog tied to a post with an invisible chain. At first, I thought I was alone. just me and the long, humming miles. But I was wrong. There are others. I started seeing them years into my walk. Other shapes drifting the shoulders, pale in the headlights, sometimes waving, sometimes just standing. You'd mistake them for flesh and blood folks if you weren't looking close. But when you do, when you really see, you notice their faces don't change. Same slack jaw, same eyes staring too wide. Like photographs someone left out in the rain. We don't talk much, not with words. We don't have to. It's more like a knowing, a pressure behind the eyes, a whisper curled into the bones. And what they told me, Jack, I wish I could forget. They said the road feeds. Every accident, every body broken on the blacktop, it isn't just chance. The asphalt drinks it in. The longer it's fed, the stronger it grows. And the ones it doesn't let go, the ones like me, we're not ghosts by accident. We're its harvest. I met one of them out on Route 6, a girl no older than 16, hair matted, dress torn like she'd been running. She never opened her mouth, but I heard her just the same. We don't rest. We don't sleep. We walk until the road wants us gone. Then she was gone. No scream, no smoke. Just gone, like headlights swallowed her. Another time, I saw a man in a war uniform. Looked like he'd stepped straight out of a black and white photograph. He walked with me for 3 nights, boots never slowing, eyes fixed on the horizon. Then one morning he turned his head. First time he ever looked at me, and his face was mine. My own face, grinning back at me with dead teeth. I stumbled, blinked, and when I looked again, he was gone. It gets worse. The longer you're bound, the more the road shows you what it really is. Lights that don't belong to cars, towns shimmering in the distance, perfect little places with neon signs and diners and warm windows. But when you get closer, they're gone, just mist and silence. Gas stations where the attendants have no faces, rest stops filled with echoes of laughter that doesn't come from any throat. Like mirages, you asked? Mirages don't follow you, I told you. These things, they remember you. They wait. They're part of the road, the same way I am now. And every mile I walk, I feel myself becoming less of a man and more of it. I rubbed my face, feeling the cold there, colder than your cab's heater could fix. You think you're driving over asphalt, Jack. But what you're really driving on is memory. Death packed into tar and stone. Every white line you cross is another name forgotten. And me? I'm one of the names it kept. You asked if they're just mirages, Jack. That would have been easier. A mirage disappears when you blink. These things, these signs, they don't vanish. They linger. They follow. Sometimes I think they're watching to see how much of me is left before I belong entirely to the road. It began with the headlights. I'd be walking down a long grade, nothing but dark trees hemming me in, and I'd see a pair of lights coming behind me. I'd step off to the shoulder, waiting for the rush of wind and the thunder of an engine. But when they reached me, there was nothing. Just white beams passing without a car to carry them. They slid over my body and left me cold as a grave. I'd turn, and the lights would keep going, out into the dark, until they vanished like they'd driven straight into the night sky. And once you see one, Jack, you start to see them everywhere. The phantom towns. The first time it was a diner, a bright chrome box on the horizon, glowing with neon, jukebox playing, the smell of coffee in the air. I walked right up to the door, hand closing on the cold chrome handle, and it was gone. Just fog. My hand stretched into nothing. But that wasn't the last. I've seen whole towns bloom out of the night, rows of shops with lit windows, children skipping rope in the street, a fire truck shining red with its bell swinging, though no sound came out. The closer I walk, the quieter it gets. By the time I reach the sidewalks, the people aren't moving at all, just mannequins posed mid-step. And then, like film catching on fire, the whole thing fades, leaving only the blacktop humming under my boots. The Greyhound one night I found a bus stopped on the shoulder. An old Greyhound, paint peeling, windows fogged with breath. Inside, every seat was filled, passengers sitting stiff, staring forward, skin gray in the dim light. I climbed the steps, heart in my throat. Not one of them moved. But when my boot hit the second step, every single head turned in unison. Faces blank. No mouths. No eyes. Just smooth, empty ovals pressing against the glass. I bolted before my foot hit the floor. The disappearing drivers. Then there were the drivers who'd pick me up. Ordinary men and women talking about weather, music, where they'd been. They'd smile, hand me a cup of coffee, ask where I was going. For a while, I'd almost believe I'd slipped back into life. Then I'd glance sideways and their seat would be empty. No driver. No hands on the wheel. But the car kept rolling smooth as glass. I'd stumble out, and as soon as my boots hit gravel, the whole car would vanish, taillights dissolving like fireflies. The road doesn't just keep the dead, Jack. Sometimes it eats the living. The reflection's gas station window. My reflection smiling when I wasn't. Lifting its hand when mine was still. I pressed my palm to the glass, and the reflection didn't mirror me. It pressed harder, as if it wanted to come through. Its teeth showed, too many of them, grinning wider than my own mouth ever could. I stumbled back, and the glass was empty. Sometimes I catch myself in a car mirror, but the reflection blinks a moment too late. Once, I saw my reflection in a rain puddle, and it stepped away, walking down the ditch while I stood frozen. The highway loop. There are places where the road folds. I'll walk for hours, passing the same green sign, the same gas station, the same bent guardrail. I've carved my initials in fence posts just to prove it, and there they are again an hour later, fresh and sharp. Sometimes I find other initials already there. Mine, but not the way I carve them. My hand, but not my hand. The hotel that wasn't outside of Wichita. I stumbled into what looked like a roadside motel. Fluorescent vacancy sign buzzing, lobby light burning warm. I pushed open the door, and a woman sat at the desk, hair pinned back, smile painted wide. "Checking in?" she asked, voice flat. I looked around. The room had no corners, just walls bending into walls, a maze without angles. And the carpet, it wasn't fabric, it was asphalt, blacktop stretching under my boots. I turned and the door was gone. Took me hours to find my way back to the road. The others like me. I'm not the only one walking, Jack. Sometimes I pass them. A man in a war uniform, boots scuffed, eyes hollow. He walked beside me 3 nights, never speaking. On the 4th, he turned and his face was mine. My own mouth smiling back at me, eyes dead. When I blinked, he was gone. Once, I saw a girl no older than 16, hair tangled, dress ripped. She never spoke, but I heard her whisper anyway. "We don't rest. We walk. The road feeds." And then she dissolved into mist, like she'd never been. You adjusted your hands on the wheel then, your knuckles pale in the dashlight. Your headlights cut through the mist ahead, and in the glass I caught your reflection looking paler than the real you. "Why you?" you asked. Your voice steady but strained. "Why does it keep you?" I leaned closer, the satchel bumping against my boots like it wanted to answer for me. "That's the cruelest part, Jack. I don't think it wants me gone. I think it wants me to keep seeing, to carry the stories, to tell them, to make you see. Because once you notice, once you hear them, you can't unsee. That's how it spreads, not with blood, with awareness." The truck hummed on. The fog thickened, and for just a heartbeat, I swore I saw a neon diner sign glowing faintly ahead of us, letters flickering. When I blinked, it was gone. I rubbed the satchel like a man calming a restless dog. "Proof," I whispered. "So no one can say I dreamed it. Jack, I've been walking this highway of shadows for years, and the signs don't fade. They're getting closer, louder, more insistent, like they're waiting for me to stop telling the story, so they can finish it themselves. You kept quiet for a long while after that, Jack. I don't blame you." The cab itself seemed to tighten around us, like the vinyl and glass were holding their breath. Even the road's hum grew shallow, a whisper instead of a growl. "How long?" you asked at last, voice so low I almost thought it was the truck talking. I laughed then, but it wasn't joy. It was the hollow laugh of a man who knows the joke has been on him the whole time. "That's the thing, Jack. I don't know anymore. Time doesn't mean anything once it's been stolen from you." At first, I tried to keep count. Days, months, years, little scratches on fence posts, carvings into telephone poles. I measured the passage of the world by the things that changed: billboards, cars, gas prices. When I first woke up after the ditch, billboards shouted about Marlboro Reds and car dealerships. Then it was soda and fast food, then insurance, then cell phones. Whole industries rose and fell while I was still walking the same shoulder. I used to watch the cars too. When I died, you'd see a lot of boxy sedans, square trucks with chrome so bright you could see your teeth in it. Over the years, they slimmed, curved, shrank, grew again. Now they look like animals, sleek, all teeth and lights. Sometimes I wonder if the drivers see me as some fossil, still trudging in boots older than their parents. That's how I kept track at first. Every new sign, every style change, every face of a world that didn't notice me. Proof it was moving forward, even if I was nailed to the same mile marker. But after a while, the years blurred. I'd look at a billboard and not remember the last one it replaced. I'd hear a song through an open window and not know if it was new or one I'd forgotten. The line between what I once lived and what the road invents for me, well, it's paper thin. My hand dropped to the satchel resting between my boots. That bag's been with me longer than I can remember. The straps rubbed raw against my shoulder for so many years the skin there is thick and numb. The leather is cracked and blackened, the way things get when they've been handled far too much. The brass buckle gleamed faintly in your dashlight, like an eye that doesn't blink. I tapped it once and it rattled, a dry, sharp tick that made your knuckles tighten on the wheel. That's why I carry it, I said, because everything else slips away. My name, my memories, faces of people I once loved. But this bag, it doesn't let go. It keeps the only proof I've got left. I pulled it onto my knees. The weight of it felt wrong, heavier than paper ought to be, heavier than bone. The buckle opened with a click that didn't sound like metal. It sounded like a clock hand, striking midnight again and again. Inside was a single thing, a newspaper clipping. The page was yellow, brittle, edges curling in on themselves like something burned. Encased in a plastic sleeve that should have rotted away years ago, but hadn't. The headline stared back in fat black letters. Local man killed in hit and run beneath it. A photograph. A bar stool. A man slouched, cigarette hanging from his lip, eyes half closed. My face. Or at least the face I used to wear when I belonged to the world of flesh and bills and birthdays. That's me, I whispered. At least it was. Sheriff wrote it up, put it in the weekly, then buried me in the back pages. Just another drunk nobody. No trial, no driver. Not even a proper grave marker. The world forgot me before the dirt had settled. You leaned in, your eyes flicking from the picture to me, and I saw it hit you, Jack. The resemblance, stretched thin by years of walking, of dying, of carrying the road in my bones, but still there. Same crooked nose, same weary brow. Same eyes, though mine were hollows now, lanterns carrying nothing but memory's smoke. I slid the clipping back into the satchel, shut the buckle. The snap echoed in the cab, sharp as a nail in a coffin. I carry it, I said, because without it, I lose what's left. My name already slips. Some nights I walk for hours before I even remember I once had one. I don't recall the sound of my mother's voice. I can't remember what color my father's truck was. I forget my sister's laugh, my brother's anger. I forget faces until they're just shadows. If I let go of this, I tap the satchel. I'd forget I ever lived at all. The silence in your truck grew heavy. I swear the wipers slowed, dragging their arcs like they were tired. You asked again. Softer this time. How long has it been? I looked out the window. The world blurred into fog and pine. The highway stretched on, black ribbon with no end. At least 20 years, I whispered. Maybe more, maybe double. I've lost the count. I've watched presidents come and go, wars fought and forgotten, whole towns built and burned down again. And me, still walking, still stuck. I laughed again, bitter, dry. I tried to keep journals once. Found a pen, a notebook. I wrote down every day, or what I thought were days, filled pages. Next time I looked, the ink was gone. Just blank paper staring back. Like the road doesn't want me remembering too clearly. Like it eats anything that isn't walking. You didn't speak, but your eyes cut toward me once, sharp and uncertain, like you wanted to check if I was still sitting there. I've forgotten more than I've kept, Jack, I said. My voice cracked. I've forgotten the woman I loved. The song she used to hum when she thought no one was listening. I've forgotten my own handwriting. I've forgotten my voice when it didn't sound like gravel in a ditch. You ever lose your own reflection, Jack? That's what it feels like. Every mile peels off another piece until I'm nothing but boots and breath on the shoulder. The satchel thudded back onto the floor. It made the cab shudder like it weighed more than your whole rig. That's why I talk, I said, softer now. That's why I tell my story to anyone who stops. If I keep speaking, if I keep telling, maybe someone else will carry the memory for me. Maybe when the last of me slips into the asphalt, the words will still be out there. My proof. I leaned forward then, close enough for you to see the cracks in my face the way you see cracks in old leather. And maybe that's the worst part. Not the dying. Not the endless walking. The worst is knowing one day I'll forget I was ever alive. And when that happens, Jack, I'll just be another faceless shadow lifting its thumb in the dark. Waiting. Always waiting. The road beneath us rumbled low, like it agreed. And in that moment, I swore I felt the blacktop breathe. The road hummed beneath us, steady as a pulse. And for a moment I thought I'd said all I had to say. But you didn't speak, Jack. You just drove, eyes fixed on the fog-drenched highway, hands steady at 10 and 2. That silence, your silence, left room for something I'd been holding back, something heavier than the satchel. There's one memory I haven't lost yet, I said, my voice thin as thread. And God, Jack, I wish I had. I leaned back, eyes closing, letting it wash over me like a wave I'd drowned in 100 times. She was the last person I saw alive. Not the truck driver, the one before. Her name was Clara. My lips quivered around it, the sound strange, brittle, like breaking glass. We'd fought that night. I said things a man shouldn't say to the only person who ever loved him. I stormed out, boots striking gravel, swearing I didn't need anyone. That's when the truck hit me. I rubbed my palms together, as if I could scrub the memory away. The last words she heard from me were poison. And the last thing I ever saw of her was her silhouette in the bar doorway, framed in yellow light, watching me walk away. I died before I could take it back. You shifted in your seat just a flicker, but I felt the weight of it. I've walked 20 years, maybe more carrying that. Not the clipping, not the satchel. That. My voice broke. If I could remember only one thing, Jack, I wish it was her laugh, her face in the morning, her hand on my chest when the world felt too heavy. But the road took all that, and left me with the fight. Left me with the look on her face as I vanished into the dark. That's the one memory it won't let me lose. I pressed my forehead against the cold window, breath not fogging the glass. You want to know what hell is, Jack? Hell isn't fire. Hell is the last thing you remember being the worst thing you ever did. The satchel rattled against the floorboards, sharp as teeth. You flinched at the sound, though you tried not to. That's why I carry the clipping. That's why I talk to men like you. Because I'm afraid one day even Clara will fade, and I'll forget the last piece of myself that was ever human. And when that happens, I sat back, voice nearly gone. Then I'll truly belong to the road. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the tires hissing on wet blacktop and the slow drag of your wipers. And underneath it all, soft and steady, the breathing of the asphalt. The cab was quiet, except for the hum of your engine and the wipers dragging tired arcs across the glass. My confession about Clara hung between us like smoke that wouldn't clear. You didn't ask more questions, Jack. Men like you know when silence is heavier than answers. But the road doesn't honor silence. The road always demands its toll. It started with your radio. A faint hiss under the static, like whispering voices crowding a room. Then a song slipped in, low, old warbling. One of those hymns that used to pour from small-town churches on Sunday mornings. The strange thing was, it was Clara's voice. Singing. Clear as the day I last heard her. You tapped the knob, tried to tune it out. Didn't matter. The hymn stayed. Next, the dash clock. You'd been glancing at it all night without meaning to, the way men check their watch in a meeting they don't want to be in. But now it flickered. Once, twice, and froze. 12:01. I laughed then. Soft, broken. There it is. You hear me talk long enough, Jack, and the road starts looking your way. It listens for who's listening. You grip the wheel tighter, eyes narrowing at the asphalt. You mean to tell me this curse, spreads just by listening? I nodded. Slow. Awareness, Jack. That's all it takes. I walk. I talk. I tell the story. And once you hear it, really hear it, you can't unhear. That's when the cracks open. The satchel between my boots rattled, though I hadn't touched it. The brass clasp trembled, as if something inside wanted out. You tried to keep calm. I could see it in your jaw, the way you clenched your teeth. What's in the bag? You said, voice low. I didn't answer at first. Just leaned down, pressed my hand over the buckle. The leather was ice cold. I could feel it vibrating under my palm, as though the newspaper inside had found its own pulse. It's proof, I whispered. Proof of me. Proof of what I was. But proof is just another word for anchor. And anchors don't just hold me, Jack. They drag others down with me. The buckle popped open on its own. The satchel yawned wide. Inside wasn't just the clipping anymore. The bag was deeper than it should have been, a black throat that stretched down forever. And from that throat came a sound. Not a scream, not a roar. Breathing. The same low, patient rhythm we'd been hearing in the pavement all night. You swore under your breath a short bark and reached to slam it shut. But when your fingers brushed the leather, you yanked them back. The cold burned like fire. The truck lurched, headlights flickered. For a second, the road ahead wasn't a road at all. It was a town, Greydove, or some phantom cousin of it. Neon signs humming. A diner full of frozen patrons. A Greyhound bus at the curb with faceless passengers pressing their heads to the glass. All of it glowing pale in your beams. And then it was gone. Back to asphalt. Back to fog. You looked at me then, your eyes hard. What do you want from me? I smiled, a tired, sorrowful smile. I don't want a thing. The road does. It wants witnesses. The dead walk so the living will remember. But memory is a contagion, Jack. You've been listening. You've seen the signs already. The clock, the voices. It's too late. Your knuckles whitened. Sweat glistened at your temple. You're not staying in this cab past the next turnoff. Good, I said. My voice was almost a whisper now. That's how it starts. You'll drop me off. You'll keep driving. But the road will stay with you. You'll see me again, a mile from here, standing in your headlights, hand raised. Or maybe you'll see someone else. A woman, a child, a soldier. Doesn't matter. Once you notice, you're part of it. The satchel snapped shut with a noise sharp as a coffin lid slamming. The sound echoed in the cab, rattling the mirrors. The wipers froze mid-sweep. The radio cut out. For one heartbeat, the only sound was your engine, and underneath it, the steady, slow breath of asphalt. And then everything came back. Lights, radio, wipers. Normal again. If normal ever existed on roads like this. You didn't speak. Neither did I. When you finally pulled over, it was on a lonely stretch with nothing but mist and pines leaning like mourners. I opened the door, boots hitting gravel. The fog curled around me like a blanket. I slung the satchel over my shoulder, its weight groaning like chains. You didn't tell me goodbye. You didn't need to. I stepped away from the truck, fading into the mist. The tail lights painted me red for a second, then the fog took me whole. You sat there a moment longer before you rolled on. The cab was darker now, quieter, and though you tried not to look, your eyes flicked to the dash. The clock still read 12:01. That was the last I saw of him. A hitchhiker who claimed he'd been dead for years. Maybe he was mad, Maybe he was cursed. Or maybe the road itself keeps its dead walking, using them as messengers to spread the infection mile by mile. I drove on, but every so often, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw him again. Standing by the shoulder, thumb raised, waiting. Some passengers don't stay where you drop them. Some passengers belong to the road. And if you listen too long, maybe you do too.